Welcome to your Houston Rewind for the week of September 12th to the 16th. I'm KHOU 11 digital anchor Brandy Smith. Your life is busy. We get it. So you probably didn't get a chance to watch every story we tell each week. This is your opportunity to catch up on this past week so you're ready for the next one. Let's rewind. Monday marked 60 years since one of President John F. Kennedy's best-known speeches. Delivered at Rice University, that speech is considered to be the spark that set America on its course to put man on the moon. Jason Miles spoke to a man who heard JFK back in 1962.
60 years to the day after President Kennedy inspired a generation during a speech in this very stadium.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Hundreds of Houston ISD students joined Rice, NASA, and others to commemorate the event.
It changed the course of our not only political, but our scientific, our technological history.
Some 40,000 people heard the president in person that equally warm September day in 1962, including 75-year-old Terry O'Rourke, who returned today.
60 years ago, I was a junior in high school and rode my bike to right here to Rice Stadium to hear the President of the United States speak about going to the moon.
O'Rourke, an attorney who later worked in the Carter administration, considers Kennedy's speech delivered from this lectern a turning point for Houston as it transitioned from the Old South to Space City.
It was audacious, but it made me want to be with him in the new frontier because space was the new frontier.
NASA's next missions seem a lot more attainable, thanks in part to what was said way back then.
60 years later, we are on the precipice of not only going to the moon again, but also going to Mars.
You can read more history in this article on KHOU.com, including that JFK also visited what was then known as the Manned Spacecraft Center. What became Johnson Space Center was just beginning to get built. The number of people registering to vote in Harris County is growing as we get closer to the November election. Marcelino Benito looked at who those new voters are.
Across the country, it's young women under the age of 45 really driving those voter registration spikes. But here in Harris County, it's Hispanic women fueling that surge in potential new voters.
It's like skyrocketing.
KHOU political analyst Bob Stein says Hispanic women are the ones to watch this election cycle. 27% of all new female voter registrations identify as Hispanic under the age of 45.
Now, to give you a comparison, that number didn't break 1% 1 year ago.
Something is motivating women to want to vote, and Stein says the data suggests that issue is abortion.
Most of these registrations are occurring after the Dobbs decision, after overturning Roe.
Stein's found a majority of these potential new voters live in Harris County's Democratic precincts.
These are close races, but I think Democrats should feel a little bit better about these new registrations.
The Dobbs decision impact already seen in conservative Kansas, where voters overwhelmingly voted not to change the Constitution to ban abortion. That result driven by first-time young female voters.
No exception for rape? No exception for incest?
It's why you see Democrats like Beto O'Rourke hitting their opponents on reproductive rights.
This issue now has forced me to be vocal about these things.
Women like Elizabeth Heller lost her pregnancy with daughter Theodora when complications forced her to have an abortion earlier this year. But with Texas's new laws, it was a painful, awful experience, and it's defining her vote. And she says she's not alone.
That is foretelling of women who are saying that this is a direct attack on my own bodily autonomy, and therefore it's challenging them to take an actual position and come out and vote.
Experts tell us to expect these trends to continue through the end of voter registration here in Texas. That day is October 11th. The next step for both political parties will be to do their best to get these potential new voters out to the polls.
KHOU 11 is helping you get ready for Election Day. Just text the word VOTE to 713-526-1111. We'll text you back with a link to a voter guide and key dates and deadlines, along with information about mail-in ballots, voter IDs, and more. There are still a lot of questions about what happened in the Uvalde school shooting. KHOU 11 continues to try to get you answers, but as investigative reporter Jeremy Rogalski explained, the Texas Attorney General's office is blocking the release of a lot of information.
When it comes to police investigation records, an incident report is about as basic as it gets. But 3.5 months after the Robb Elementary shooting, here's what was released. 2 lines about how officers responded to the school about an accident and shooting. The other 14 pages of the report are completely blacked out.
These records tell us essentially nothing about what actually happened that day because of the heavy redactions.
Attorney Reed Pilifant represents KHOU 11 and more than a dozen other news outlets that are suing the city of Uvalde and others for records.
I messed up, it's still shooting.
The Attorney General has blocked the release of additional body camera footage of the incident, as well as dash cam video, dispatch recordings, and 911 calls. The AG's office said information relating to litigation must be withheld, and the release of some of the information would interfere with the detection, investigation, or prosecution of a crime.
Our argument is that the shooter is already deceased and can't be criminally prosecuted, so the vast majority of these records could be released without impacting any investigation.
The records that were released did provide some nuggets of new information. The shooter's uncle called police dispatch advising his nephew was the shooter and that there was no change in his behavior over the past couple of days. And a few days after the massacre at the shooter's grandmother's house, the shooter's mother went to pick up her son's property but was issued a criminal trespass warning and told to leave the location.
Dig into more of those details on KHOU.com. A judge will ultimately have to decide what records the city of Uvalde has to release. Meanwhile, the media coalition, including our parent company Tegna, is also suing the Uvalde School District, Sheriff's Office, and DPS for records. In Harris County Commissioner's Court on Tuesday, the 2 Republicans boycotted a budget vote, arguing more can be done to lower taxes. Democrats say without the new budget, there will be $100 million less to fund crucial services. Here's Adam Bennett.
And this resolution reads,
the public seats were full, but 2 spots on Harris County Commissioner's Court were noticeably empty.
Really nice campaign ad here.
County Judge Lena Hidalgo showed news releases emailed during today's meeting by the court's 2 Republicans. Both skipped the meeting, so there legally would not be enough commissioners there to vote on a new tax rate. Democrats say the proposed 1% cut would be the largest in 32 years. But Republicans say taxpayers would still pay more next year because of rising appraisals. For a $300,000 home, they'd owe an extra $115 per year. In a statement, Republican Commissioner Jack Hagel wrote in part, quote, "Now is not the time for local government to take advantage of inflated property appraisals to pay for an expanded government footprint. Now is when we should be fighting alongside taxpayers to help them dig out from under the rubble." Fellow Republican Commissioner Tom Ramsey wrote in part, quote, "I'm not against spending money. I'm for using it properly, not wasting it." Commissioner Ramsey says he's identified enough of what he considers waste to make up the $100 million difference between the 2 budgets.
We have to abide by the law and go to a no new revenue rate, which is going to have us take things off of the proposed budget.
Harris County has grown by over 200,000 people, almost 250,000 people in 3 years. And so obviously you have to increase revenue to some extent in order to keep up with the demand for services.
Both Commissioners Hagel and Ramsey are pledging $7 million each from their own precinct budgets to make up the difference in the flood control budgets. Meanwhile, Judge Lena Hidalgo says she believes the county will be able to repost the meeting for the tax rate within the next 7 days, giving commissioners more time to figure all of this out.
After the vote, Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez tweeted, "It appears with no quorum for vote on tax rate, the HCSO budget is now slated to be $42 million less. This significant reduction will derail our proactive efforts to fight crime, increase response times, and further strain jail operations." As always, we have more details on KHOU.com. Also Tuesday, KHOU 11 was the only local news organization to sit down with Governor Greg Abbott as he made several campaign stops in Houston. Len Cannon asked the governor about criticism over his abortion policy and what's next in the Uvalde investigation.
Governor Abbott took 5 minutes off the campaign trail today to answer questions about controversial topics.
Last year, when you were criticized for having an abortion law with no exceptions for rape and incest, you said, quote, back then, "The number one goal in the state of Texas is to eliminate rape. That is admirable, Governor, but hardly possible."
Well, if we don't try to eliminate rape, we're making mistakes. Surely we can all agree that we should do all that we possibly can. If Harris County judges were enforcing the law and keeping rapists off the streets as opposed to releasing them on bail, that alone would mean that more than 1,000 women over the past 3 years, just in Houston, Texas alone, would not have been victims of sexual assault. So you got to start somewhere.
And nearly 4 months since the massacre in Uvalde, still no answers as to why officers waited and waited and waited.
Governor, it boggles the mind, and I'm sure you've thought about this, 77 minutes before the gunman was taken down.
Completely unacceptable, complete violation of the standards that we have in place in this state, contrary to what everybody has known for years of what has to be done. Is unacceptable, and there must be accountability for it.
I interviewed you on July 27th, asked you about releasing body cam footage from DPS troopers at Robb Elementary in Uvalde. You said it's in the public interest, should be soon as possible, has not happened yet. Why not?
As I understand it, the reason why DPS as well as other law enforcement have not provided the body cam information is at the request of the district attorney.
You can watch the whole 8-minute interview on KHOU.com. But Abbott wasn't the only candidate in Houston Tuesday. Beto O'Rourke courted Latino voters on the east side, and he spoke with our Marcelino Benito.
O'Rourke stopped in Houston's Segundo Barrio tonight, one of Houston's predominantly Hispanic neighborhoods. He took questions in English and in Spanish and told me the Latino vote will be pivotal this November. In the heart of Segundo Barrio.
Come on up here, next governor of Texas, Beto O'Rourke!
Beto O'Rourke came to hear from communities he says Governor Abbott has ignored.
I guarantee you he hasn't been to this park or to Segundo Barrio. He hasn't listened to the people that he's served.
He listened.
Gracias, Beto! Sí se puede! Sí se puede!
And responded.
Nuestros hijos y hijas.
To Spanish-speaking voters and vowed with their help, he'll win the governor's mansion.
We are going to win this election on the night of November 8th.
We hold a lot of political power if our people will come out and vote.
In Harris County, new voter registration spiking. The most notable increase, Hispanic women under the age of 45.
We are in power. We have decided that we are going to stand up for ourselves, for our daughters, for our mothers, for our sisters.
O'Rourke says the fight over abortion rights is rallying voters like never before and will be a key issue at the ballot box.
I'm confident it will be Texas women, including Latinas right here in Harris County, who will win the protection for that right back again in 2022.
A new poll out today showed O'Rourke within just 2 points of Governor Abbott. I asked him about that, and he says he sees more excitement and energy now than he did back in 2018. But the campaign laser focused on registering more voters and then getting them out to the polls.
We're less than 8 weeks out from Election Day, so here's a reminder about some important dates leading up to it. The last day to register to vote is October 11th. Early voting runs from October 24th through November 4th, and Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th. You can get all that information and more helpful links about the midterm elections by texting the word VOTE to 713-526-1111. We will text you back with a link to our voter guide on KHOU.com. On Wednesday, we learned the FBI is tracing who made the hoax shooting call to Heights High School that prompted the city to mobilize all its resources on Tuesday for what turned out to be a false alarm. Anayeli Ruiz talked to investigators who say they're coming after the person responsible.
Room 213 in the English classroom, 10 students were shot.
This is a call dispatchers received yesterday about Heights High School. The fake caller even relaying a description of the suspects and weapon.
Our suspects are a Hispanic male wearing a white shirt and a black jacket, black pants. I also have a white male wearing a black shirt, green jacket, blue pants. Unknown their exact location at this time. They have rifles.
Within minutes, officers arrived at the school and began making their way to that classroom.
Making entry on the north side with U.S. Marshals.
This call turned out to be a fake, but the damage is done.
Look at the emotional distress that some of these students, teachers, school parents were under yesterday. Yes, that threat was a hoax, but that emotion was real.
The FBI says every law enforcement agency takes these calls very seriously and will send all of their resources to determine if it's a credible threat. So far, since the beginning of the school year, the FBI alone has received 17 threats to schools in the Houston area.
Thankfully, we've been able to mitigate the majority of those threats. There are a few that we're actively working.
And to prevent any tragedies, they continue to ask people to report anything suspicious they see on anyone. Yes, even a family member.
The fact that you're contemplating whether or not to report something like that is enough for you to report it.
But a message they want to get out, a warning to those who are thinking of making those fake calls.
This is a very serious topic. If you're going to do it, like yesterday, we're going to find out who you are, where you are, and you're going to have to deal with the consequences.
School safety threats, even hoaxes like the one at Heights High, have considerable fallout. Our KHOU 11 Investigates team discovered thousands of parents chose to keep their kids home after threats last year. When threats trigger absences, that can put students and teachers behind. Investigative reporter Jeremy Rogalski learned that happened at more than 100 Texas schools last year.
In the pickup line outside A-Leaf's O'Donnell Middle School, parents are coping with a new reality.
It's scary. It's absolutely scary.
It's like now we're in a different time.
A time when school safety threats are more common than rare. Like this Instagram post last March warning O'Donnell students, quote, "You better duck, 'cause I'm blowing all y'all's heads off."
What can we do? What can we do with our kids right now?
What parents did at 30 school districts last year was keep their kids home. KHOU 11 Investigates analyzed Texas Education Agency data and found on 65 school days last year, safety threats triggered high absence rates, 30%, 40%, or higher. After fights broke out at Kingwood Park High School, 70% of the student body didn't show. Threats even shut down entire schools at 4 districts last year.
There's a man with a gun in the school.
Like when a gunman shot the principal at Yes Prep Southwest.
I was hiding for my life.
But it's not just physical attacks that have repercussions. Threats can come from anywhere.
Somebody in another country across the Atlantic can disrupt our school.
A teenager from Great Britain targeted Dickinson High School with a hoax call about a gunman. The next day, about half the students were absent.
And so it just completely impacts the learning to where really no teaching and learning can happen on a day like that.
Even indirect threats triggered high absenteeism at several districts, from the ripple effects of the Uvalde school shooting to TikTok rumors of an American school shooting day.
It is a distraction and a disruption if they're not in the classroom because they're going to be behind no matter what.
After a string of threats last year, Pasadena ISD launched this edgy public service video.
I thought I wouldn't get caught. I thought wrong.
The district says the number of threats have since gone down.
A student with a prank, there's consequences, and those consequences can be jail time.
All the school districts Jeremy cited applied for attendance waivers with the state so they wouldn't lose funding from having fewer students in class. A Crosby area woman wants to find out who left a possible unmarked grave on her property. The mystery turned into an investigation that Harris County deputies and Texas EquiSearch are working to solve. Brittany Ford reported investigators hope someone will come forward to help them close this case.
Miriam Sosa bought this property next door to Barrett Station Evergreen Cemetery last March. Little did she know.
It didn't have plaques like the other ones. It didn't have anything like that to show names or date of, death.
What she would later uncover.
Very crazy. At first, I thought it was just leftover dirt from one of the other graves. And it did have flowers on top of it.
That was back in November. Fast forward to June of this year.
I, come to see that they came out and they actually put stuff out as like a memorial almost.
She says the cemetery next door told her all gravesite plots on their property were accounted for. That's when Sosa says she contacted local authorities.
And especially when they have no record of it and nobody wants to be accountable for it. That's even worse. It could be a crime. It could be a missing person. We don't know.
This is hers and this is the cemetery. Whoever put that there was not aware of the property line is what it looks like.
Harris County deputies calling on the expertise of Texas EquiSearch, whose ground penetrating radar would find.
The top of the vault would be 3.5 feet, which is what the machinery was showing us. So we did this. You hear that? Yeah. So we're pretty sure there's something in there.
The hope to track down the family of whoever may be buried here.
So, I just want anybody with information to come forward and let us know.
Solve this mystery.
Solve it.
There is a considerable process to get the paperwork to dig up what's believed to be a gravesite, so this could take a while to find a resolution unless someone comes forward. On Thursday, Texas bused migrants to Vice President Kamala Harris's home in Washington, D.C., a day after Florida's governor paid for migrants to be flown to Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. Adam Bennett looked at response at those destinations and here in Houston.
In Washington, D.C., it's an arrival that caught local officials off guard. And in Martha's Vineyard,
we're trying to coordinate to help all of you.
The migrants, too.
Immigrants who were told that they would be greeted here with a place to stay and with jobs.
About 50 people from Venezuela were flown to the tourist island in Massachusetts yesterday without warning, on the order of Florida's Republican Governor Ron DeSantis.
Every community in America should be sharing in the burdens. It shouldn't all fall on a handful of red states.
Today, Texas Governor Greg Abbott said, quote, Texas will continue sending migrants to sanctuary cities like Washington, D.C., until President Biden and border czar Harris step up and do their jobs to secure the border. Since this spring, Governor Abbott and Republican Governor Doug Ducey of Arizona have bused more than 11,000 migrants to Washington, D.C., Chicago, and New York, all cities with Democratic mayors.
The motivation here isn't to help these folks. The motivation is to score political points.
Now, the head of the National Association of Christian Churches Disaster Services, a nonprofit in Houston that helped process more than 30,000 Haitian migrants here a year ago, is headed to New York to help their city with these new arrivals.
We will help them to reconnect with family to the final destination.
We got into more detail about the back and forth in this article on KHOU.com, but California Governor Gavin Newsom is urging the U.S. Department of Justice to investigate moving migrants from one state to the next. No word yet whether the DOJ responded to Governor Newsom's request. Thursday kicked off Hispanic Heritage Month, marking the independence anniversary of 5 Latin American countries. Throughout the month, we'll share stories celebrating the culture and traditions of the Hispanic community. Cheryl Mercedes introduced us to a Friendswood family who helped build roads, schools, and restaurants, and is breaking barriers for Latinos.
Everywhere you turn in Houston, you're likely to find something under construction. But there's a unique story buried beneath this project on El Dorado Drive.
It's a brand new road expansion.
Raquel Bujorn, an Hispanic female, is the founder and CEO of Grupo Indy Construction Partners. She oversees this operation and runs what has become the largest Latino construction company in the city.
We're 8th generation Texan. The border crossed us. We didn't cross the border.
Raquel's career started on a different stage. The former professional mariachi singer is quick to tell you it was a long climb to the top. Her construction career got off the ground 15 years ago.
There was like an ad for somebody that needed to dig a ditch. I figured I could pick up a shovel.
15 years later, her company has built everything from apartment complexes to bridges and even Waffle House restaurants. But Raquel says her favorite job was restoring the University of Houston Bauer College of Business after it was damaged in Hurricane Harvey.
It was pretty cool remediating the classrooms that I actually got instructed in.
But getting those contracts took a lot of work.
Do you have a lot of competition? Yeah, actually.
As a woman in a male-dominated industry, Raquel says she often has to prove herself.
9 times out of 10, we have to do an extensive explanation or kind of like a resume before we even get to start talking about business.
Raquel's scope of work speaks for itself. Indy has more than 35 offices in Mexico and over 500 employees. But at its headquarters in Friendswood is where you'll find her family at the table.
Construction debris.
Yeah, they work here too. Her mom, Elaine Gracia, is the vice president.
Did you ever think you would work for your daughter?
Never, ever. To think that it would grow to a point where, my husband leaves aviation and I leave everything that I was doing just to do this? No, ever, ever.
It wasn't easy, but the former singer says she was built for this.
100%. I knew, I was determined. I got really comfortable with rejection, and I used that rejection as an opportunity.
She's not done creating opportunities for Latinos. Raquel says while Houston will always be home, her goal is to become the largest contractor in the state and one day in the U.S. For years, demographers predicted the Hispanic population in Texas would surpass the white population. Reka Mutaraj shared initial census data indicates we may have reached that milestone.
The Hispanic population in Texas has grown significantly faster than the white population for years. And now the Census Bureau's American Community Survey shows in 2021, Hispanic Texans made up 40.2% of the state's population, while non-Hispanic Texans made up 39.4%.
Houston, of course, is way ahead of Texas.
Dr. Stephen Kleinberg, a sociology professor at Rice University and founding director of the Kinder Institute for Urban Research, says Harris County hit this milestone in 2010 when Latinos made up 41% of the population and Anglos 33%.
After 1982, 40 years ago, the Anglo population of Harris County stopped growing. And all the growth of this, the most rapidly growing city in America, has been the influx of African Americans, Latinos, and Asians. And this biracial southern city dominated by white men has become the most ethnically diverse city in the country.
Dr. Kleinberg says a major factor is age. The average age of Anglos in Harris County, 46, while the average age of the Latino population is 25.
And the great question is, are we prepared in Houston and in Texas to make the investments we need to make to ensure that Latino kids are prepared for the jobs of the 21st century?
He adds that the diversity in Texas is an asset, but ultimately jobs and education will determine our state's growth and success.
I think the great challenge for the future of Houston and America is not really an ethnic divide, it's a class divide. In every community, a growing middle class and a growing underclass, predicated above all else on access to quality education from birth to college, from cradle to career.
In North Harris County on Friday, deputies busted what they're calling an illegal game room and bar. Inside, they say they found evidence of drugs, illegal gambling, weapons, and possible sex trafficking. Michelle Choi talked to investigators about the establishment on Riveston Road in Aldine.
Deputies say that a legal game room and bar was operating out of a big warehouse located on this private lot behind those soccer fields, an establishment the sheriff called a hub of criminal activity. Brand new violation notices, including an order to stop work, are now posted on the side of this warehouse. Around 2 this morning, the Harris County Sheriff's Office and other agencies, including the Harris County DA's office, raided what they call an illegal game room and bar.
So hopefully the community can find some relief. These places are magnets for crime.
A sting that took months to set up.
This was an extremely successful operation tonight.
Located in the middle of a neighborhood, deputies say inside they found evidence of drugs, illegal gambling, underage drinking, weapons, a chop shop, and possible sex trafficking.
The criminality that's coming out of this one establishment is really off the charts. We know of at least one fatality on the roads due to intoxicated driver coming out of this establishment early in the morning. There have been multiple shootings at this establishment. And any time that you have a place that sells alcohol up until and past 8 in the morning, you're setting this type of tragedies up.
We're told an investigation into a road death was what led authorities to this establishment, which the DA's office says was being run by an individual who deputies had already identified out of another establishment. This morning, several people were arrested in connection. Many of them have active warrants. In addition, they say the building itself had several code violations and was operating without proper licenses. The DA's office is now working to permanently close it down.
We are going to try to erase this crime driver from this neighborhood community.
As for the charges, we're told they're wide-ranging, including and engaging in organized criminal activity.
The race for Texas Agriculture Commissioner has a controversial issue on the table: marijuana. One opponent wants to legalize it completely. The other doesn't, but both agree the state needs to expand medical access to marijuana. Janelle Bluda broke down where both sides stand.
CBD, THC, hemp, marijuana. If you're not a cannabis enthusiast, you may not know the difference. But in Texas, they each have their own definition and their own law. Both CBD and THC are found in the cannabis plant. CBD is legal while THC is regulated. Hemp is legal, but marijuana is not. The difference between the two is a federal definition. Hemp has a THC concentration of less than 0.3% and is legal in Texas. Anything over that is considered marijuana, and that's illegal for recreational purposes. Now that the vocabulary lesson is out of the way, let's talk about the law. Medical marijuana is legal in Texas, but only for certain diseases, such as epilepsy, autism, cancer, and PTSD.
The problem that I have with it is we pick winners and losers.
Texas Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller, a Republican,
some diseases can be treated, some can't, even though it helps them.
Believes it's time to expand the medical marijuana program.
We just need to get the bureaucrats and the elected officials out of making medical decisions and let the doctors make those decisions for their patients.
But his Democratic opponent in the November election, Susan Hayes,
myself, I really like consuming cannabis to get a good night's sleep. It's great for insomnia.
Says the state needs to do much more than that.
In Texas, there's this lack of willingness to engage in facts, science, or policy.
She says Texas needs to decriminalize and legalize.
What happens if you decriminalize but you don't regulate? The black market comes rushing in even more.
And according to a recent poll by UT Tyler and the Dallas Morning News, many Texans agree. 55% of Texans want legal recreational use. 72% support medical marijuana. And legalizing cannabis might come with some income. Colorado has made $2.2 billion in tax revenue since 2014 from legalizing marijuana, something Miller says he's looked into.
And what they tell me is it does generate a lot of revenue, but it's pretty much a wash. It takes all of that revenue to oversee and police the programming.
In Houston, Janelle Blue, KHOU 11 News.
To learn more about these candidates and their stances on other issues, visit KHOU.com. We hope that helped you catch up on this past week. Now you're ready for the next one. Remember, you can tune into KHOU 11 on air, online via KHOU.com and YouTube, as well as by using our KHOU 11 Plus app on Roku and Fire TV. Have a great week.